Hello Booktube, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Marilyn, welcome. I'm here for two reasons. One is a health update. I've been missing in action on Booktube for, well, a week and a half, 2 weeks. But I've had a really rough couple of months, as many of you know. But the second reason I'm here is because it's the end of the year, it's December, and I wanted to be part of all the action that happens on Booktube in December. And my Booktube part of my video is my 5 best rereads. And I'm not sure, this might be my only 5 rereads. So they're not all the best books I've ever read, but they called to me enough that I wanted to reread them, especially the first and the last. But first, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what's going on with me. November was a really rough month for me. I've been to emergency twice. A lot of symptoms. I can't eat very well. I was losing weight. I was having palpitations, high blood pressure, or so I thought. And it turned out, well, we don't know 100%, but basically they did labs on me that came out okay. EKG came out okay. I wasn't having a heart attack. That was good. And yeah, and then they did more labs that came out okay too. So they think it's just a reoccurrence of my panic disorder, my anxiety disorder. And I'm not sure why it hit me so hard this time. It might have something to do with the fact that I got ill on vacation in June, and things started kind of going downhill from there, and I've had terrible insomnia. And if anybody has struggled with insomnia, you know, I really feel for you, because it's been a nightmare without the nightmare. Well, sometimes there was a nightmare. I mean, I managed to sleep a few hours a night, and I was feeling a little better, so I thought I wanted to make a video. So excuse me if I don't look my best, don't speak my best. I'm not as, you know, have as much vitality as I usually have, but I'm sure my friends here will understand. And thank you so much for all of your good wishes and thoughts and prayers and everything. I really do appreciate that. So let's get on to the video, because I think it's interesting when you want to reread a book. And the first book I don't think is well known at all, and maybe you'll like it. It doesn't have many reviews on Goodreads at all, and many of them were negative on Goodreads, but on Amazon there were quite a few good reviews. And I think I read this book because there was something about it that was so sad and so perplexing. I don't have the book. I read it on Kindle, but I'll have it here. It's called In Sickness by Barrett, Rollins, and it's a memoir. So the premise is a medical emergency forces a brilliant Harvard oncologist to reveal that she has been hiding her advanced breast cancer for a decade. Her husband, Barrett Rollins, also an oncologist, must set aside his anger and feelings of betrayal so that he can care for her during her final year of life. The premise is not as straightforward when you read the book as it seems to be. So this is what's on the tin. When Jane, a world-famous Harvard oncologist, collapses at work, the medical team resuscitating her makes a shocking discovery. She has advanced breast cancer that she's been hiding for years, and the results are catastrophic. In Sickness shows how even the most rational people can be nearly destroyed by their irrational fears. And I take umbrage with that, because I don't think these were the most rational people, despite them, you know, working for a very famous medical center and also being doctors. But anyway, In Sickness shows how even, so it's tragic, moving, and wryly funny. I found it mostly tragic, to be honest. So somebody who was writing a review said, this book is a trip. The person's name was Carol, by the way, Carol S. Jane is an absolutely terrible, abusive, and a manipulative person. Her desire to keep her cancer a secret isn't coming from a place of privacy, but the desire to control everything around her. Her husband, the author, an enabler with no backbone, who has been beaten down due to years of blackmail, gaslighting, and walking on eggshells to make Jane happy. He talks about how happy it made him to be her servant for 30 years. They're both oncologists, and Barrett finds out about the cancer 4 years before the events of the book, but just ignores it because Jane asked him to. So it's a book of complicated secrets. And a lot of other people said that they don't understand why, how honest he really was being. But if you really read between the lines, Jane had really severe mental health problems. Some people said it was narcissistic behavior. She might have had health anxiety or some kind of a controlling person. And it shows during their marriage they had happy times. She was also keeping him away. I say keeping him away from his family, his daughter, but he was a party to that. So yeah, it kind of reminded me of abused situation where she didn't want to be told what to do. She wanted to make her own decision, but at the same time she was also very fearful of sickness, which is really interesting when you look at the mental health aspects of it. That a doctor who helps people, I think she eventually went into research because she didn't really work one-on-one at during this time, but she was beloved by the staff at this hospital. I think it was Andy Anderson or something like that. Correct me if you know the right name. But I listened to an NPR talk about this book when it came out, and that's why I was fascinated, because it's a mental health issue, it's a relationship issue, it's also a breast cancer issue, and the relationship is wild. It's a fast read if you're interested in any of these subjects, and it's really fast paced too. So they were talking about that she's narcissistic, self-destruct, and she's self-destructive. And when you think of it, I've been reading a lot of books on mental illness lately. Duh. And doctors have a high rate of suicide. I mean, they're under a lot of pressure. So why are we thinking that they should be, above just regular people? And at one time, people thought doctors were like saints. But so anyway, he does find out that she had cancer, and she had such a hold over him that she made him promise that she wouldn't tell. And so it says it's a shocking, when I listened to it, a shocking expose on how even doctors can have mental illness and, or be abused or be abusive. And so the husband is telling the story, and I'm not going to tell you how it ends. Well, it's obvious part of the ending, but I think that if you're interested in either relationships, how they work, behind the scene, how doctors, it has a lot of medical and doctor stuff, how he met her when he was an intern, no, or I think she was the intern, and he was pretty new himself because they were married a long time. Anyway, if any of this sounds interesting to you, or maybe it's really not interesting at all, and I can understand that, but I was moved to read this again for the mental health aspects of it, even more than and also to find out more about how doctors can be in abusive relationships as well as the average person. Okay, so I put that first because I thought maybe no one has read it, or not many people have read it, and I read it twice, so I don't know what that says about me, but okay, so the next book that is a reread for me is, and this, you have to forgive me for this, I thought this was Sense and Sensibility, but it's not, it's Persuasion. So then I said, oh, this got to be it. No, it's Northanger Abbey. And believe me, I do have Sense and Sensibility. And I reread this for Jane Austen July. And I liked it better the second time I read it, because I read it a long time ago for the first time. I read it maybe in my 30s. And I think it improved on the reading. I found it funny, much funnier than I did the first time, where in my 30s I took everything, so seriously. So the premise of this novel is simple. Father dies, I'm sure you read this book, most of you, and his estate is left to his son, John. A deathbed promise made to his father that John will look after his 3 half-sisters is not fulfilled by the selfish son. In part, I can't blame it 100%, because we don't know what would have happened if the selfish wife wasn't involved, but she was, and together they're pretty awful. So the eldest sister, Eleanor, she has good sense, good judgment, and discretion. But her sister Marianne is emotional and volatile, following her heart with a supreme disregard for what society might and does think. You have to also realize that they're very young, like 17 and 19. So, even though they're brought up in this, Victorian age, you still have to take that into account. It has a lot of funny lines. One was, Eleanor agreed to it all, for she did not think he deserved the compliment of rational opposition. So, as always, Jane Austen gives you a lot between the lines, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. There was some part toward the end. I didn't like the men in this book as much as in other Jane Austen books, and I think this is the first book she actually wrote, if not the first one she published. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Okay, so what is the third book in my 5 books? Now, I read a lot of Agatha Christie. I reread a lot of Agatha Christie. But what made me read this particular Agatha Christie again was because of I think it's a 2022 film that I saw on TV that starred Kenneth Branagh. I hope I'm saying it right. Now, I have 2 copies of the book. This is one. And this says based on a soon major motion picture. And I'm wondering, because there was a motion picture in 77 or 76 that had, I think it had Bette Davis in it and a lot of famous stars that had a really good rating. And this is the second copy I have in a more portable edition. So why I'm talking about this movie is because 2 reasons. One, it's very modern. It's a modern retake of Death on the Nile. And it kept my attention very much. It was beautiful cinematically. The acting was good. But I didn't know, even though I read it like more than twice or 3 times, I didn't guess who what was going to happen in the end, and it shocked the heck out of me. Then I went back to see what other people thought, and I was a little disappointed to find out that they kind of messed with the plot, and some people said it had too much green screen in it. I'm not sure what green screen means, so if you know, please let me know. But I think that messing with Agatha Christie's plot, usually I think what happens is, at the end of most Agatha Christie books is Poirot, and this is a Poirot book. He gets them all in a room and tells what happens. And this time you kind of see everything that happens, but if the plot is not Agatha Christie's plot, I don't think that would be a good thing. But you let me know if you've seen either the movie or read the book. Now, the fourth book is a book I really, really loved, and I think my reasoning for rereading it had to do with the plot. And Barbara Pym is an author that I became acquainted with, I think because of Shawn from Shawn Breathes books and other people who love Barbara Pym. And my favorite, well, it's one of my all-time favorites, is Quartet in Autumn, this beautiful, beautiful book that I bought because I bought all of Barbara Pym, most of Barbara Pym's books. So what is it about? Now, I just want to give you a little backstory on Quartet, on Barbara Pym. While she was writing this, she found out she had breast cancer. So here's another breast cancer connection between the first book I was talking about. And it has a lot of Barbara Pym's wittiness. What it says on the tin is, one did not drink sherry before the evening, just as one did not read a novel in the morning. I thought that was very interesting. I'm sure many people read novels in the morning. And I'm sure people drink alcohol before the evening. So it's 1970s London, and we have these four people we're following. Edwin, Norman, Letty, and Marcia, or Marcia. They work in the same office and suffer the same problem, loneliness. Now, I always have a different take on on what they say on the tin. So these four people, yeah, like I said, they're approaching retirement age. And, they have one thing in common. I don't think it's all loneliness, but they work in the back office of a little unnamed bureaucracy. The work is largely irrelevant, and I think it's going to be closed down soon. There's no one else, just them in the office, though there is a wider office all around them. And now and then a perky young woman pops in and out with the mail. She's not much liked. It all feels like they're out to pasture. And that's another thing they have in common. But another thing that I got that they had in common is this takes place in the 70s. And like it says, 1970s. And there's a lot going on in London at the time. And they're dealing, well, it does say this, the world is changing. Life in post-war Britain shifted around them, and they can't deal with it. They don't know what to deal with it. I'm sure they see a lot of people on Carnaby Street in their mod outfits, and yeah, so it's full of black humor, obstinate optimism, which I like. I think we all need a little obstinate optimism, and of course it shows how her growth as a writer, because it has a lot of the things that Barbara Pym's novels are famous for. There's meetings, there's churches. So you see early on that the language is going to be pretty grim. So I typed up a line. It says, "Now the fire was sinking, as it was for all of them. But was she or any of them ready to depart?" So we're going to get a lot of that. And it's funny because they don't much like each other that much. But we see how they're dealing with the same kind of thing and in their own different ways. And I think it's kind of true when people get to retirement age. Sometimes they feel like even now, as the baby boomers like me, the baby boomer booktuber, retires, and I retired quite a while back, but they begin to feel that the world is going on without them. Though I try to keep my brain on the present moment. I'm on Booktube, right? I'm on YouTube, and I do know my way a little bit around the computer. So what was my favorite? I'm sure you know already, because I tried to do, well, I was going to say I tried. I successfully had 2 people who read this book with me, and it was my favorite and will be my favorite. Probably my favorite book of all times and my favorite reread of all times. Can you guess what it is? My 75th anniversary edition of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And now it's much more than 75th anniversary. What I love about this book on a reread, and you should all read it and reread it, is that you learn something new on every reread. It's so rich. It has 5 parts in it. And, I'm not going to go into all the parts except like part 1. But what I found out just by doing this video is that the manuscript started out as a nonfiction. And it was titled They Live in Brooklyn. And she started submitting it, Betty Smith did, to publishers in 1940. So, and I just have to show you the book again. So I read this with 2 people. One was Jack of Spread Book Joy, and I'm thinking that it was Kim, but I could be wrong, of an Oasis of Books, or it could have been another booktuber, and I don't want to say, well, I'll put her name down below if she is the person, but I was pretty sure it was Kim. Or it could have been Denise from Dalby Books. One of the 2 read it with me. And so we're following a young girl who lives in Brooklyn, who reminded me of my own young self in some ways, because I was born, as I always say, in exactly the same neighborhood that Francie, our protagonist. And book 1 opens in 1912. And we're introduced to Francie Nolan, as most of us know, who lives in the Williamsburg tenement neighborhood of Brooklyn with her 10-year-old brother, Cornelius, or Neely for short, and their parents, Johnny and Katie. And Francie relies on her imagination and her love of reading to provide an temporary escape from the poverty that defines her daily existence. So the father is an alcoholic who works on and off as a waiter, and the mother, and they're really subsisting on the mother Katie's wages, and she cleans apartment buildings, and they get pennies from junk selling. It was very interesting seeing them walk down the same Graham Avenue that I walked down when it was much different in the 60s, 50s and 60s, and 70s. But it still had the same sort of flavor, the different populations, that were living together but yet apart. For example, they had the Irish neighborhood, and then there was the Jewish neighborhood. And one part that I didn't remember reading on this reread was that there was bands of Romani, or gypsies as they called them, that put on little shows on Sunday, and the children would be taking care of their younger brothers and sisters and just wheeling them in little carts so they can see the show, and maybe throw pennies to the Romanis. And in the 50s, I still remember there was a storefront, and I was fascinated because a Romani family, which we called gypsies then, lived in the store, as well as I think they told fortunes, I'm not sure. But so that was still part of Williamsburg's existence in the 50s. And I remember seeing the young kids playing near the open window of the storefront, and wondering why they didn't have, why they didn't have a house, for one, or maybe they lived in the back of the store probably. But yeah, so there was so much for me to get out of it. But when I read it with other people, they could be living like Jack was living in another country and still feel very close, because Jack of Spread Book Joy has Irish ancestry. So she, got that. A lot of things from, that I don't want to, share, she'll tell you, from the story that related to her, even living in England. And it also related to the military in the 1940s. The soldiers abroad, they read it, wrote letters to Betty Smith, because as we go on, we follow Francie until she's like 17 or 17 and a half. So we see her dating life, and we see the world around her change from the 1912, of course. And in the second part, we're going backwards, where we see her mother and father meet. And I'm not going to tell you much more about that. But so a big part of the story is very sad, because Francie really feels akin to her father more than her mother. Her mother is a little hard on her. Her father, despite his alcoholism, she can talk to him. And his alcoholism makes it difficult for him to hold a steady job, and he sees himself as a disappointment to his family as a result. And when she's young, she admires him because he's handsome, talented, imaginative, and sentimental, and so is she. And but she has very little time for sentiment, since she becomes the breadwinner for her family in later parts of the book. But I really loved this story because it was real, autobiographical. And I don't think the tree is a metaphor for a tree that can grow in and flourish in a poor tenement. And there's a picture of the tree, and it actually is a tree. And when I went to New York recently on the trip that I got sick in on, you see many of these trees, and wherever you go, there is a name for the tree. I'll have it down below, because I did read it when I was preparing for this video. And it's amazing what it has to do to survive, how strong it can be. And that's the metaphor, that no matter how poor or disadvantaged your childhood is, and mine was, we lived in that neighborhood, and they had built a city projects around that neighborhood, and they tore down those flats that Francie lived in. Not all of them, but most of them. And I'm here in Hawaii. True, I'm not famous except in my own mind, right? I raised 4 children as a single divorced parent, so we never really had much money, and I never could work enough to, at that time, to have a really good retirement income. But you find out in the end that really doesn't matter. What matters is the experiences you have in life. And I've had many wonderful experiences, and one of those experiences is being here with you today. No matter that I'm not feeling my best, but I'm doing it. You know, I'm doing it because doing it is better than not doing it and thinking that I wanted to do it, but I couldn't, because I'm stronger than I think I am. And so are you. So anyway, if you enjoyed all this psychobabble, maybe, but true psychobabble, is that such a thing, true psychobabble? You know, I was almost going to quit Booktube last week because I thought I wasn't strong enough to do it. But I you know, my partner said, just wait a while. You love this so much. You know, you're getting so much feedback in these last 5 years. And I've been here 5 years. So this is where I should say, if you like this video, if you like me, like, comment, and please subscribe. And I will be back in December. I'm not going to have a schedule. I'm just taking it one day at a time. But it was so wonderful being with you today. And as always, I wish you wonderful health and happiness. I hope your Thanksgiving, if you're in the U.S., was wonderful. I didn't go anywhere, but I was brought back a little turkey. Not that I love turkey that much, but still, right? It's Turkey Day. So I wish you all, like I said, aloha.